Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Tim Tokwe. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for checking in again. So today we are going to be cutting and sewing this queen and neckline. So if this is what you're interested in knowing how to make, so you want to continue watching this video, do not forget to like this video, give your comment, and also subscribe to this channel if you're yet to do so. So let's go straight into the tutorial. For this time, I'm going to be cutting directly on the fabric, and I have this fabric folded into two. So what I use to fold this fabric is the bust measurement. I divided bust measurement into 4, and I added some extra inches, about 5 inches extra. And the length here is the half length, and I added 1 inch to it. So that is half inch for stitching allowance for the upper part and the lower part. So I'm going to be putting my tape at the starting line. And then I'm going to be marking the bust point. The bust point is 11 inches, but I'm going to be marking 11.5. This is to include the stitching allowance for the upper part. I'm also going to be marking the under bust measurement, and that is 15 inches. But I'm going to be marking 15.5 to also include the stitching allowance on the upper part. So I'm going to draw a straight line across this point, and this will be the waistline. So on the shoulder line, the starting line, I'm going to be placing the shoulder. So I'll divide the shoulder into 2. The shoulder is 16, divided by 2 is 8, but I'm going to be marking 8.5 because I want the shoulder to cover the whole shoulder area. Then I'm going to be taking the neck measurement, the neck width, and that is 4 inches. I'm going to be using 4 inches for this person. So if you're not so big, you can use 3.5. Then I'm going to be taking the neck depth, and that's going to be 6 inches. But then to include the stitching allowance on the upper part, I'm going to be marking 6.5. So now I'm going to take my ruler and then rule these two together, just like this. And this is just like to create like a compartment, like a close where I want the neckline to be. This is not the actual neckline. So now I'm going to be marking 4.5 inches from the starting line, and this will be the first curve for the neckline before curving the second one. So I'm just going to mark this to indicate that part. Then I'm going to bring my curve, and then I'm going to be placing it like this. So now I'm going to use my chalk now to mark this to the 4.5 inches mark, just like this. Then I'm going to be taking my curve again, and then I'm going to be connecting it like this to be the center line at the neckline there. You can see the way I'm placing it. So now I'm going to be curving this towards the center. So that's going to give me like a V shape. And so now I'm going to be raising this other rectangle, this other one. So it's just going to be this curve. So now to make the V come out, to make it deep, I'm just going to raise this up like this. And so this is how I'm going to cut this neckline. So let's cut it and see what it looks like. So let's open this up. You can see what it looks like. So I have the perfect shape here. So now continue with the cutting. So I already divide this. This is my shoulder line. So on the shoulder line, I'm going to come back down by 1 inch, and then I'm going to be connecting it towards the neckline. Then next, I'm going to be getting the armhole depth, and to do this, I'm going to divide the bust measurement into 6, and then I'll add 1.5 inches. So this will give me 8.5. But I'm going to include the stitching allowance for the upper part. So I'm going to be marking 9 inches. And this will serve as my chest line. So I'm going to draw a straight line across this. Then the shoulder, I'm going to be connecting it to this chest line, and this will be the armhole. So on the chest line, I'm going to be dividing the bust measurement into 4, and so I'm going to be placing it here. And then the shoulder line, the armhole, I'm going to locate the middle, then go in by 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to be connecting these 3 points together with my curve. So this is the chest line, the bust point, the under bust, and this is the waistline. So at the bust points, I'm going to be using half of the nipple to nipple measurement to place the dart. So the nipple to nipple measurement is 9, divided by 2 is 4.5. But I'm going to be marking 5 inches so as to include the half inches to stitch the dart together. And I'm also going to be marking this on the waistline. Then I'm going to be connecting it with a straight line. So from this point, I'm going to be connecting to the middle of the armhole with this curve. So I'm just going to place it like this and then connect it to the middle of the armhole. Then at the under bust, I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch at the front part here. And then on the other side, I'm going to be taking 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to be doing the same thing to the waistline. So I'm just going to roll it straight down to the waistline. Then I'm going to be connecting from the under bust to the bust point with my curve, placing it like this. You can note the way I'm placing it. And I'm also going to do the same thing to the other side. So at the armhole here, I'm going to be taking the bust dart. So I'm going to be taking 1 inch as the dart here. And then from this point, I'm going to connect to the bust point. So I'm going to use my curve. And I'm going to be placing it like this to the bust point. And then I'm going to connect it. But I'm going to be extending this line. This is because I'm going to be cutting out this dart here. And so I'm going to measure what I have here, which is 1 inch, and then I'm going to be placing it here. So I'm going to place it back here. Then I'm going to reconnect this to the chest line, and this will serve as a new armhole. So I already marked the bust measurement on the chest line. Now you can notice that we have about 1/2 inch as a dart allowance there on the chest line. So this dart allowance, I'm going to be placing it back. Then on this chest line, the dart here, I'm going to be needing 1 inch to stitch it together. So that 1 inch, I'm also going to be placing it here. And then I'm going to be adding 2 inches seam allowance. So now I'm going to be adding the seam allowance, which is 2 inches. So let me come again. I divide the bust measurement into 4, and that is why I get 10.5 here. And then this allowance here, the dart allowance, which is 1/2 inch, I place it here, so I got 11. And then I will need 1 inch to stitch the dart together. And so I have 12 inches here. Now I'm adding 2 inches for the seam allowance, so I have 14 inches. So at the under bust, I'm going to divide the under bust measurement by 4. I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to measure what I have as the dart allowance, which is 2 inches. Then I'm going to be placing it back. Then I'll be using 1 inch to stitch the dart together. And remember that we cut directly on the fabric, so we have to include that. So that 1 inch, I'm going to be marking it here. Then I'm going to be now adding the same allowance, which is 2 inches. So the waistline also, I'm going to divide the waist measurement into 4. Just like I did to the under bust, and then I'm going to mark it. I'm going to also measure what I have for the dart, which is 2 inches, and I'll be placing it back. I'm going to include 1 inch that I'm going to be using to stitch the dart together, and then I'm going to be adding 2 inches, which is going to be the seam allowance. So now I'm going to be connecting these lines together. Then I'm going to be cutting it out. So before I continue cutting the front part, I'm going to be using it to cut out the back part. So I'm going to be placing this on the back fabric. So I'm just going to roll out the starting line, the chest line, bust point, and the waistline, so that I will not have to do that all again. So I can remove it now and then connect the lines together. So this is the chest line, the bust point, the under bust, and the waistline. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is on the waistline, I'm going to be marking 3/4 inch, and I'm going to connect this upward. This is to eliminate the zip bulge. So I'm going to be marking the zipper allowance, which is 1.5 inches. I actually needed 1 inch for this zipper allowance, so the 1.5 already includes the stitching allowance. So I'm going to connect it upward. Now I'm going to be placing the dart measurement, and I'm going to be using half of the nipple to nipple measurement. So I'm placing it at the starting line here. Then I'm going to mark 4.5. I'm going to include 1/2 inch for the stitching allowance, so I'm going to be marking 5 inches. Then I'm going to include the zipper allowance, which is 1.5 inches. So that makes it 6.5. So I'm going to measure what I have from the beginning there, and then I'm going to be marking it all the way too. So I'm going to mark it on the chest line also. Then I'm going to connect with a straight line. Then on the waistline, I'm going to be taking half of an inch on both sides, and then I'm going to connect it upward. So on the starting line, I'm going to be taking the shoulder measurement. So I'm going to divide the shoulder measurement into 2, and that is 8 inches. And remember that we use 8.5 for the front part. So I'm going to be placing 8.5. And then on the neckline, I'm going to be using 4 inches, just like we use for the front part. So you can see that I'm placing it after the zipper allowance. So I'm going to be making 4 inches for the neck width, and then the depth, I'm going to use 1 inch. But because I'm cutting directly on the fabric, so I have to include the stitching allowance. So I'm going to use 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to connect it with my curve like this, and then extend it towards the zipper allowance. Then I'm going to come down by 1 inch on the shoulder line. Then connect this to the neckline. Then I'm going to join it to the chest line. So this is the armhole line. And then I'm going to locate the middle of the armhole. Then I'll come in by half of an inch. Then on the chest line, I'm going to divide the bust measurement into 4. Then I'm going to be connecting the 3 points together with my curve. So the dot on the bust point, I'm going to connect it to the middle of the armhole. And I'm also going to use my curve to do this. So I'm going to be placing it on the bust point so that the curve will not be so sharp. So this at the armhole here, the middle of the armhole, I'm just going to be extending it by half of an inch so that I will not be short of fabric by the time I'm stitching the darts together. So now I'm going to reconnect it back to the chest line. So on the chest line, I already have my bust measurement. I already divided my bust measurement into 4. So now I want to include the allowance that I'm going to be needing to stitch the dart, and that's 1 inch. And then I'm going to be adding the seam allowance, which is 2 inches. Then on the under bust line, I'm going to divide the under bust measurement into 4. I'm going to mark that and then measure what I have as my dart intake there, and then place it back here. Then I'm going to be adding 1 inch for the stitching allowance and then 2 inches for seam allowance. Then on the waistline, I'm going to divide the waist measurement into 4. I'm going to mark it and then measure what I have for the dart, which is 1 inch, and then I'm going to be placing it back. Then I'm going to include 1 inch for the stitching allowance, the stitching of the dart, and then 2 inches for seam allowance. Now I'm going to connect the lines together, and then I'm going to cut them out. So on this lower part, on the waistline, I'm going to go up by 3/4 of an inch. You don't have to do this if you are on the big, if you are not big, but I need to do this to eliminate the zipper bulge proper. So this is the front part. I'm going to be ironing my hairstay to it. This is my interfacing iron to it. And now I have my pad. I already ironed my pad to it. So now I'm going to be stitching this together from the lower part to the upper part. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side and to the lining. So I already did that. Now I'm going to be placing the lining on it. And I'm going to be pinning it together. So now I'm going to take it to my machine and then stitch it all the way. So when I get here, I'm going to raise my footer up, then come this way, make sure it has a V, and then continue like that. So let's go to the machine. I'm going to go ahead and notch it, especially the angles, so that I can have the right curve. Then I'm going to open it up So now I'm going to be top stitching on the lining, not the fabric. So I'm going to top stitch all the way to the end. So now I'm just going to remove everything and make sure that all the angles are out. So after ironing, this is what I have for my neckline. Now I'm going to be joining the sides together. So I'm going to be turning it to the wrong side like this, and I'm going to be joining the sides together. So this is the back part. I'm going to be stitching it from the lower part to the upper part, and I already have an interfacing iron to it also. Then I'll do the same thing to the lining. So now I'm going to place the lining on it and stitch on the neck area. Then I'll top stitch on the lining. Then I'm also going to be joining the side and the zipper area. So I already did that, and I've also top stitched on the lower part. So now I'm going to be placing the back part on the front part just to join the shoulders. So you can see the way I'm placing it. So I'm going to take the lining of the shoulder part and then flip it all the way around across the other ones. You can see the way I did it. So now you can go ahead and pin this down so that it does not shift while stitching. So now I'm going to stitch this down, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So I already did that, as you can see here. So now I want to close the zipper area. So I'm just going to use my pin and mark 1 inch all the way down. So now I'm going to be placing the front part on the back part, and then we pin it together also. So now I'm going to take my tape, and on the bust line I'm going to be marking the bust measurement. I'll divide the bust measurement into 2 on the chest line. I'm marking this on the chest line. So now I'm going to mark what I have left, which is 3 inches, and I'll divide that into 2. So that's 1.5. So I'm marking 1.5 on both sides. So the under bust also, I'm going to divide the under bust measurement into 2, and then I'll mark what I have left, which is 3 inches, and then I'll divide that into 2. I have 1.5. So I'm marking 1.5 on both sides. So on the waistline, I'll divide that into 2 also, and then mark what I have, and then mark what I have left, which is 3 inches. I'll divide 3 inches by 2, that is 1.5. So I'm marking 1.5 on both sides. So I'm going to be connecting these lines together. So now next thing I'm going to do is to go over to my machine and stitch it together. So this is it. I already stitched it together. I can see how beautiful it looks. So I'm going to be fixing the sleeve and the lower part. So this is what we have. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe. Bye.